Hello and welcome to the Fairy Whispering Podcast. I'm your host, Claire Silvermond. Witches have long had a special relationship with fairies, and in this episode we are treated to an exclusive insight into this unique and magical connection. My guest, Siofra Bradigan, a witch by birthright, shares her deeply personal and authentic encounters with fairies and otherworldly beings that have graced her path since childhood. This is a rare chance to delve into an episode previously only available in video format on my Fairy Whispering YouTube channel, which I released in October 2023. Due to time constraints and scheduling at the time, I couldn't release it as an audio episode. But fear not, my audio episodes always offer something extra that you won't find in the videos. Sometimes I add a small clip at the end after the credits have rolled. This might be an outtake from the episode, a quote from my guest, or something unexpected. I like to think of it as fairy treasure. If you're curious to see Siofra and me on video, I've included the link in the notes for this episode. This is an independent podcast produced entirely by me, so please support via my Buy Me a Coffee page, and please share this episode with a friend. Thank you. I first connected with Siofra via her YouTube channel, Siofra's Magic Alcove, where she shares her grounded wisdom and magical insights. I highly recommend you check it out. These episodes are for listeners over the age of 16 and not for children. This episode comes with a gentle advisory for the sensitive, as Siofra shares some vivid memories of past lives and from childhood, which are deeply moving and some sensitive listeners might find upsetting. My thanks to Siofra. Remember to keep your heart open and let the whispers of the Fae guide you through the shadows and into the light. Enjoy the episode as we travel through the gateways between the worlds. The Fairy Whispering Podcast explores guests' encounters with the other world of fairy and ways of connecting with this realm. From listening to messages in owls' hoots, finding a four-leaf clover, chasing rainbows, or inviting a gnome to dinner. I'm Claire Silvermond, a fairy whisperer, researcher, and your guide on this journey. Take my hand and step into the twilit woodland, where they are waiting to meet you. Hi, welcome to the Fairy Whispering Podcast. Today, my guest is Siofra Bradigan. She's talking to me from Oregon today, and Siofra has known since birth that she was a witch, and she's had many encounters with fae and other beings since childhood. And I discovered Siofra's work through her brilliant YouTube channel, Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I've really appreciated coming across her work because I see her as a very down-to-earth, transparent person with the way that she conveys her wisdom. And I thought I can learn a lot from this lady. I've invited her on today to share some of her amazing fae experiences and other encounters and some of her wisdom that she's retrieved from the other world. Welcome, Siofra.
Thank you very much. Gonna give me a big head.
So where to start? Because I've been watching so many of your videos and you've sent me a wonderful bio, and I thought maybe we could start with your experience of knowing that you had a past life as a witch, and then there's another past life that you remembered as well. So, could you just share with us this knowing that you've had and your past lives?
Well, I think that my conscious memory of having been here before starts about 4 years old.
Mm,
It's, as far as like, I think I always knew, um, but around then was when I became very much aware of it. And the first thing I remembered was being burned at the stake.
mm.
So, yeah, not much fun.
Oh gosh, that is.
And so I remembered that
God.
part. I didn't remember the rest of it at that point. I just remembered the ending, I guess you could
Mm,
say. But then the other life I remembered was so completely different from physical reality here.
yeah.
It's like a place where I used to dance with my aura. I could see the colors of my aura and so forth. And I used to do that as a kid all the time. I was always like making motions with my hands and
Yeah.
trying to recreate that sense of that feeling of energy moving and to try and see the colors and stuff again. And there
Mm,
were so many things that were different, like stone was alive and you could feel it when you stepped on it. It was like pretty clearly not physical reality, I
mm,
don't think.
mhm.
I think it was like another dimension or whatever
Yeah.
that experience was in, like before we were all here as solid beings and so forth. But I think that remembering that gave me some kind of grounding and hope
Mm,
and also something to compare things to. And so when things happened to me, I knew when they were wrong, that there was
mm.
something wrong with the people I lived with and something wrong with how they were treating
Yeah.
everybody. And it was just this kind of thing. And a few years back, I remembered before I was born, just before I
Mm,
was born,
gosh.
which was like an amazing thing
Mm,
because I was a ball of light and I was floating, and there was another ball of light, and it was kind of floating around me. And this voice said, "You will now forget everything you know until it comes time for you to remember."
wow.
And I woke up from that and like, I remember I was supposed to forget. Like, how
Gosh.
awesome is that?
Yeah.
And, so the things like that have happened, they never know when they're going to happen. They just sort of spontaneously take place. And I remember, like, I guess in school, they started talking about the Salem witch trials. And
Mhm.
I was raised in Rhode Island at that point. I started school in the first grade in Rhode Island. So I went through first through eighth grade there. So I don't remember what grade they started teaching about the Salem witch trials, but I was like, ha!
Yeah. So
And
you,
I was a witch. And then I started like
mm,
looking at all this information and it was all wrong. Like
mm,
nothing felt right. I did research. I found some old grimoires and I think I probably read the Malleus Maleficarum. And that was a horrible book written by the Inquisitors and so forth, and how to recognize a witch. And all of that was wrong. You just had this sense that this is just wrong. Um, and so Yeah. And then the other major thing happened when I was in grade school, in the fourth grade. They started teaching us about Greek mythology. So I
mm,
learned about gods and goddesses,
mm.
and my mind just exploded. I went, my brain just went like, really? You mean people used to think different? They used to have different sets of beliefs than they do now. Well, this means that they could have different sets of beliefs again.
Mm.
And it just kind of made my little brain just go crazy. And I immediately named my doll Aphrodite. She was my first goddess. And then my sister was jealous because my doll was a goddess. So I let her name her doll Venus. Because in my opinion, Aphrodite was the original. So we played our, goddesses with our dolls and
Oh,
things. And
wow.
I really wasn't aware of the fact that, it's like it was just who I was.
Mm.
And I was born in 1950, and there really wasn't much out there. I think as a teenager was when Sybil Leek first did her interview on television, and I discovered that there were other people that were witches that were out there, which was extremely exciting, but she was too far away
Mm-hmm.
for me to do anything about. And then the the spirits that I saw when I was a kid seemed to be there to comfort me and try and protect me. I had two guardian angels, and they would like sleep on either side of me when I went to bed at night. And, they couldn't really do much about what was happening in my house, but it seemed like they were just trying what they could do to make me feel better. And it was around that age too that I first met Moida, who is like the being I channeled for a number of years in the late 70s and early 80s. And so they were always around. And then I spent as much time as I could out in the woods and walking around and laying on the ground and looking at the clouds. And there was this big old rock at one of the houses on base where we lived I called it the Cleopatra Rock, because it was like a chaise lounge kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
And it was just a perfect shape to lay on and lay your head back and look up at the sky, and it was all warm by the sun. So I loved being outdoors because it was certainly safer than being in my house, to say the least. And that's where I encountered a lot of different spirits and things like that. They were just there. They were just a part of my reality. And I think it was first grade when I realized that other people didn't see the same things that I did. There was a very big moment in my brain where we were standing with all of us were standing looking out the window, this big window for some reason. And I kept seeing all these sparkling, moving balls of light. And they were just moving all over the sky and the horizon. And I had heard of UFOs because they had been talking about them already. And I thought maybe that's what they were, because I didn't know what a UFO was. And I said something to the other kids, and I said, hey, look at all those moving lights. And they all looked at me and they said, what are you talking about? There are no lights. And I went, okay. So then I tried to suppress it,
Yeah.
which was pretty much impossible for me. I can't suppress it, but I did. I tried, and not tell people what was happening. And then when I went into puberty, I started having premonitions, like one after another, and they all happened. Every one I had came to pass. And that was a very chaotic time. And I was very confused. I didn't like it. I didn't have any control. I didn't understand why I was experiencing that stuff. And in my brain later, I decided, because I told my mother everything that happened, she came to trust my intuition and my visions and my premonitions. And I saved her from my father a couple of times. And then I helped convince her that we needed to leave before he murdered us, because that was pretty much about to happen. So, and I wasn't ready to leave. I thought, I have things, I don't know what they are, but I don't want to leave yet. And so, I was the oldest in the family. So I ended up having all that stuff to deal with in therapy later to, try and work out, because I always thought of my siblings as my children, because I was trying to protect and take care of them and so forth.
Yeah. Gosh.
But one of the things that really got me was in the late 70s is when I heard about Starhawk and got her book. and was able to use her book to start restructuring my own subconscious and start to deal with some of that trauma. And it gave me a sense of power and control over myself and my own life, is one of the things I like about the craft, seriously.
Yes, yes. So, but that sense of being able to change your reality and, yeah, your
Yeah.
future, your pathway, who's around you, all of that. I can imagine that.
Yeah, taking responsibility for your own self
Mm,
and, you know, your mental health and your path and so forth. When I had that shamanic dismemberment kind of experience I had, where I kind of, I guess, was psychotic for about a year.
mm,
I would think, I was hallucinating constantly. And how I managed to get out of that is anyone's going to guess. I really don't recommend it.
no,
It's not a good place.
mm,
But it was one of those moments, a sort of a watershed moment, where I had to decide what I was going to do and what I was going to accept. And I've actually had people contact me because they've gone through similar things.
yeah. Would you say it's like the dark night of the soul
Well,
experience or
more than
something?
that, it's
More than,
actually, yeah,
yeah.
the dark night of the soul was more like an angst kind of a thing compared to this. This was, I experienced all of my deaths between all of my lives.
Wow.
And
It's
and I
intense.
couldn't, and getting into my body didn't stop anything. So everything was happening no matter, usually being in your body helps to kind of minimize some of that sort of stuff. It sort of gives you a buffer
Mm,
between you and all the mental and astral stuff that might be out there, because if you saw it all the time, it's crazy
mm,
making.
mm.
And so I had to deal with it. And the way it was like, every time I died, someone would ask me a question, and then they would say I lost a piece of myself because I answered the question wrong or something. And then at the end of that set, this horrific, ugly creature thing came up and said, "I'm the things you gave away. I'm all the things you gave
Oh,
away. Now you have to remember me." And I'm like, no,
gosh.
no,
Mm,
no, no, I am not doing that. And Moira was there
mhm.
during that experience, and she sort of talked me through it. She was like on the other side of all the stuff I was seeing. She says, "This is a memory. You're just
Yeah.
remembering this. This has
Mm,
already happened. You've already survived it. Everything's fine. You've
mm,
remembered it. You know, just let yourself remember it." I'm like, yeah, easy for you to say.
yeah.
You're not on this end of it.
Yeah.
But seeing her helped, you
Mm,
know,
mm.
because she wasn't like any of the other stuff. So it's more of a complete destruction of the ego. It was like I lost everything that I thought was me,
Mm.
um, and I kept a grain of sand and refused to give that up. And then from that, I had to rebuild my entire psyche.
Gosh, how did you go about that? I mean,
That's the question. I mean, seriously, it's not, it doesn't happen overnight. Obviously,
mm,
it took a long time. Um, but it changes the way your brain works when
mm,
something like that happens, when you no longer are prone to the normal stuff that society throws at people. It's like you can't conceive or perceive things the way everybody else does. And
mm.
it's hard to describe. And so I don't have the responses. Um, I'm not influenced very
Mm.
much by media, for example,
Yeah, sure.
and that kind of thing. But it's like it does. It's a fundamental shift in
Mhm.
all of reality, and
Mm,
it made me personally responsible for my own spiritual development.
mm,
Period. Is
mm.
like anything from that moment forward that happened was all because of work I did and choices I made. And that's one of the things that I talk a lot about on my channel, is taking personal
Yeah.
responsibility for our actions and not hiding from our warts. You know, it's like if we hide from them, then there's nothing we can do. We can't fix them if we don't know they're there or don't recognize the fact that something needs to be done.
Yeah.
So I have a lot less projection that I do onto other people. At least I hope so. I try. Projection is normal. People project, they can't help themselves because that's part of empathy, really.
Right.
And
Yeah,
project
sure.
yourself into someone else's life. But I do my best. I try to become aware of it. And I'm always learning something new.
Yeah. And I'm wondering how, there's this real contrast, isn't there? You're talking about these really beautiful experiences that you've had, and this real sort of dark side as well, as dark and light.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering how your connection with the Fae, you've spoken about your spirit guide as well, how that team of otherworldly beings have helped you through this process.
Well, I think that nature in itself, when I was going through that at the beginning of that experience, everything was covered with awful stuff. Like thought forms were everywhere. There were demons on everything. And I was actually just talking about this the other day. I remember sitting on a hill outside and I was looking at this tree and it was just covered with these creepy creature thingies that were just like, being mean and saying awful things or what have you. And I was looking at this tree and I'm like, no, this tree is a beautiful tree. This is a life. There's beauty and wonder in this thing. And I'm going to make these things go away so I can see the leaves again because they were covering up everything. And so I like forced these images away. How, I don't know, but I did until I could see the tree again. I mean, it was like making it impossible to eat because there was just like this horrible stuff on everything. And so getting back to nature was a key thing. And then the encounter that I had with the tree, because, I went through some different breakups and stuff like that. And when I was a kid, I used to think there was something seriously wrong with me, that the universe must hate me, and because everything was just so awful. And I would like cry myself to sleep every night. I call it soul sobs. You just sort of feel everything is broken.
Oh gosh.
And I was feeling like that again. My kids were little. I was leaving my second husband. I was sitting outside on the porch and I was just sobbing. And I felt this very distinct, amazing warmth and love and care just sort of wrap itself around me. And it was so startling because it was seriously not how I was feeling at all.
No.
Knew it couldn't be coming from me. And so I kind of stopped crying, like, what is going on here? And then I realized it was the tree in the backyard that had reached out. And that was probably one of the most healing things I think that has ever happened to me. That kind of broke open a whole bunch of stuff because it was in that moment that I realized that the universe, nature, life, all that stuff out there accepted me and loved me just exactly for who I was and how I was and everything else without any kind of a judgment. What people thought didn't matter.
Yeah, I can understand that feeling of
because everything, and that was around the same time I made a commitment to try and accept reality on its own terms without trying to interpret it, what people thought, because I realized everything I knew, people had decided. They had written it down, they had defined it, they had said it, they had spread it. And the realization that we're not as smart as we would like to think we are.
I've heard you say that, and that's really struck me. That's really, to do with that kind of ego dismemberment thing that you were talking about, that, no matter what we read, how much we learn, it's all been done before, it's all out there. I mean, that's kind of thing you're talking about, isn't it?
Well, yeah, if we're
Yeah,
accepting what people's version of reality is, but reality itself is so much bigger than that.
yeah, sure.
And reality doesn't care what we think of it. It is, it just exists. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I've been able to have these kinds of experiences with different spirit beings and so forth, because, I'm coming to them not from I know what you are and I know what you do, and I've heard all these stories about you, but
Sure.
I'm like meeting them on
Yeah.
their own terms
Mm.
without the judgment already pre-laid down. And
Oh, that's yeah.
thing that's been
Mm.
one of the things I've been trying to talk to people about, is
Mm.
if we consider the fact that reality is just, we're a small part of reality, and reality is, there's so much more out there. I mean,
Yeah.
compared to the entire universe, what are we? We're like very minuscule,
Mm.
and so it's been our problem for a long time. For the cat's meow or whatever. It's like, we are the epitome of all things that have ever happened. And it kind of blinds us to other forms of intelligence. I
Mm.
mean, I've been able to meet, for the first time, I've met like a stone matrix, the spirit of a stone. That was a surprise. Uh,
I'd
I
love
have
to hear
this,
about that. Sorry.
yeah, I have
Yeah.
this piece of blue kyanite. It's just a raw piece of kyanite,
Mm.
and I just liked it, and it wasn't very expensive. I don't have lots of money, so I don't have to have a fancy super stone. And
Sure.
I just like, this feels nice in the hand. I like that stone, so I'm going to take that home. And so one night, I see a lot of stuff just as I'm getting ready to go to sleep, and my sight opens up as soon as the sun starts to go down.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Can, can you
It,
control it, or is it
a
just
little bit, yeah.
happens?
I can control it to a certain extent, but yeah, and
Yeah.
decide what I'm going to pay attention to. But I'm laying down sleeping, or starting to go to sleep. I start to see this form
Mm.
like next to my bed, and it's not changing shape or anything. It's static. And I'm
Mm.
like, well, that's weird. Why isn't that changing shape? Because usually things just are moving around all over the place. And then I'm looking at it, and it has these planes, like solid planes, uh, edges and things. And then suddenly I realized that it's the shape of my crystal. And now I know which way is up. This crystal.
Wow.
But I mean, the stuff that I see when I'm going to bed, I never know. I met a native guide. I went to a power spot, a medicine
Mm.
in southern Saskatchewan,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
I met this guy there at this power spot, and every so often he comes back. He just sort of
Mm.
shows up, and I never know when or why. He just kind of is there. And one night I saw this very large eye, and I'm like,
Wow.
what is that eye? And I'm like, trying to figure out what this eye is, and I sort of back up, and it's a horse. He's on his horse, and
Oh.
is next to my bed. Uh, okay, I what you doing? My horse. But it's just
Mm.
like the stuff is just there, and
Mm.
I'm a paranormal investigator, and I
Oh.
help go to cross over to the other side. I learned how to open up the portal between the worlds, and so I've had a
Mm.
lot of experience with helping spirits who are stuck in one place to get to where they're supposed to be.
To move over.
And
Yeah.
and so yeah, it's kind of interesting, all the various things. And we were talking about this on the live show yesterday, and like people ask you what kind of a witch you are. There's
Mhm.
people love labels. They really want to
Yes.
find things. And my
Yeah.
answer to that is, I'm whatever kind of witch I need to be for the moment I find myself in.
Mm. That's a good answer. I mean, coming back to the labels as well for fairies, I mean, we are tend to be hung up on labels for fairies and what type of fairy they are. And oh, if it's not in the fairy dictionary, then it's not, you can't be seeing a fairy. And I mean, that's
It
not my
be
belief,
something
but
else. Yeah.
yeah, that's the kind of thing you come across, don't you, when you're dealing with that realm. So, and you were saying something before we came on about your understanding of the fairy realm and who they are, and it'd be great to hear about your viewpoint on that.
Well, I know that they have their own thing. That's the
Mm,
thing. A lot of people say they want to work with the fairies, and that's great, except usually when they say that, they want the fairies to do things for them.
mm, yeah.
And you know, the fae decide who they're going to work with, and in what level. I have helped them out in certain situations, and they've helped me out in other certain situations. It's kind of like they have their own culture, their own idea of what needs to happen and what they need to do.
Hmm.
And so it's more like, um, it's a relationship,
Yes. Yeah.
and and it's up to them. I in this relationship, I feel it's up to the fae to decide how much contact, what kind of contact, and so forth that they want. The fact that I can see them for what they are is something they find fascinating. And I had one night,
Right.
I had about a dozen gnomes come into my
Oh
room,
my gosh, I'd love to hear about that.
and
Yeah.
I kept seeing all these different faces. It's like
Mm,
one face would come, and we're talking, these are like the most detailed line drawings you've ever seen in your life. It's all black and white. It's not like in color for me,
right. Yeah.
but there's these intensely specific, and they all had different noses and facial
Mm.
hair and eyes and so forth. And what they wanted to know was, could I see that they were all different? And I said, yes,
Oh,
I can see that each one of you is different. You know,
yes.
they don't look the same, they're individuals. And so
Yeah.
that
Okay.
was just like, they just thought that was the coolest thing. And the most recent encounter I had was with the forest troll.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah, I'd love to hear about that. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
we went to this power spot. There's a power spot in Oregon that's a place
Mm,
that you can rent. I found accidentally, and it opened
mm,
a lot of my clairvoyant abilities. I started seeing all kinds of things, like giant things in the sky,
okay.
and just
Mm,
and there's a I don't know, a fairy colony or whatever there, that both my husband and I saw in years past, where
oh
they
gosh.
have their houses and stuff. It's on another plane, but they're
Mm,
and it's very distinctive looking. I think the most beautiful female fae I've ever seen uh, was
yes.
I mean, it's like hard to describe, but when she came into view, it's like there's just this absolute glowing beauty that
Mm.
is possible to really share. But it was there, so it was wonderful. So we were very excited that we got to go back.
And
And
that was, sorry to jump in, but I was watching that video actually earlier today where you talk about that experience, and you were talking about how I mean, the way that I understand it, it's scrying, a way of scrying where you were looking at the bushes and seeing the fairies appearing. Is that the
mhm.
experience you're talking about? Yeah, because I mean, I can relate to that. That's the way that I see the fae in nature
Yeah,
appearing
they
from
start
nature.
off like pareidolia, where you sort of, where people tend to see human figures in anything that they have because the brain wants to have something, excuse me,
Yeah.
identifiable. But then they become distinct.
Mm,
And with the forest troll, I got into a different section my husband and I had, and this was funny because he sat in one area to meditate, and apparently the fairies didn't like where he was sitting,
mm.
and he got the message that he needed to move. So he was very excited about that. Do you know I moved?
Yeah.
I said, they didn't like where I was. So I had to go somewhere else. I'm like, awesome. He says, yes, that's very exciting that I could tell that they didn't like where I was. And I was sitting, farther down the path,
Mm,
and there was this this tree that just seemed to have a presence about it. And so I was like looking at it. I'm like, okay, so I just softened my eyes and let my clairvoyant vision start to open up and waited. And then all of a sudden, the most amazing 10-foot tall troll appeared, as solid as could be, with very intense eyes. And he was right at me. And then he knew I could see him. And that happened. So then he started trying to change his shape. He started shifting, because they do that a lot because they're worried about how we're going to react. I think what they look like, because we have a lot of judgments about what things look like and what that means. And he's just started to get different sizes and so forth. And I said, no, that's fine. You can just be who you are, and that's okay with me. And then he reverted back to what I'd seen previously. And we just sort of sat there and looked at each other. No words were exchanged. There wasn't a message, but it was just this, yeah, I can see you and it's okay. And I think that's, a lot of that kind of programming that we have is something's got like warts or a big nose or is tall and intimidating. And it brings up all these childhood fears and anxieties and the stories about the Fae. There's a lot of those, and a lot of them have been spread by the church because they were trying to keep people from having interactions with the Fae. And so they became part of Satan's denizens, like sort of spirits of some kind. And so whenever I read a story about a fairy and it starts off with, on my way back from church, I'm like, okay, well, that's not a story I need to read, because there's an implicit bias.
Moral meaning.
And then the fairies are going like, can I be saved? It's like, can I have a soul? I'm like, no, that's not field. They've been here longer than we have.
Yes. Yeah.
And not only have I met them, but I've also encountered a couple of inhuman spirits that aren't fairy at all. And yeah, I'm glad that I can be on my toes and be in the moment and pay attention, because this one being who was sort of like a cross between a tiger and a lion reminded me of a Fu lion kind of thing.
Sorry, what's
a Fu lion? A Fu lion is like a Chinese spirit.
Oh, okay.
A lion dog kind of protects temples and so forth. And he got stuck in this house. He couldn't find his way out.
Oh.
And when I encountered him, it was a huge amount of energy, and my tendency is to like get closer. Like closer so I can like feel more and figure out what it is. And I started to get closer, and there was like growling and teeth. So I'm like, oh, back up. Back up and sit down. Let's not get closer. And then started to try to communicate with this being, and got images of people throwing books at it and water at it. And, I'm thinking, oh yeah, someone tried to exercise this thing.
Oh gosh.
And it had so much energy. I could like clawing furniture or, in frustration. And it was very suspicious of me and all the people that were in the house, because it didn't know what we were up to. And I have a selenite wand I use, because selenite, I love selenite. That stuff is just wonderful. It's kind of like solidified light force.
Yeah.
It's like energy that's made into a material form that you can hold on to. And so I used my piece of selenite, because spirits can see that energy. And I put it, like projected it down into the other side, I guess, and said, follow this light. I can lead you out of this place so you can get unstuck. And I started backing up slowly, and it followed me out of the house. And that thing had so much substance that everyone else who was there saw the shadow on the rug as it passed over the rug. And then we got it outside, and then it was very happy. really wanted to come back in. We're like, no, no, getting stuck again. And it is, I've tried to see if I could find out any stories about it, like from the local native legends and so forth, but there's so little information about some of the spirit beings. And so we gave it a place outside and
Okay.
gave it like some crystals or whatever, and you could actually see where it slept. It actually
Mm.
slept with the grass.
Mm.
The
Oh,
woman,
wow, that's amazing. So it's like you've got a pet food
funny
lion.
is every so often she could see it walking by. It was like guarding her house because she was a fellow witch.
Really?
And
Yeah.
there was this guy, these two guys, there was a bar nearby, and these two guys came by in the middle of the night, and she heard them. And the one guy was going to like go to the bathroom outside of her fence,
Right. Okay.
talking about doing that. And then
Yeah.
all this dead silence. And then he's like, I think I'm going to go home and do that at home. So she's pretty sure that he felt the presence of
Yeah.
the spirit being going like, yeah, just try it. So, it's like, just like there's like different species of animals and so forth.
Mm.
It's like, there's things that live in South America that I will never see,
Mm-hmm.
and things that live in Africa and Australia and so forth that I will never see, but it doesn't mean that they're not there.
No, sure. Mm.
So trying to keep an open mind and
Mm.
sort of experience things as they go. Um,
Yeah, I'd like to talk with you a little bit more about the crystals because I've got another episode coming up in a couple of weeks' time where I spent some time with a woman in another part of the UK who has lots of fairies in her garden, gnomes, all sorts. She calls them nature spirits. Um, and she has a shack in her garden, like a creative building where she does all of her, she has loads of crystals. She sells crystals. And I was saying to her, well, I think these fairies are very definitely attracted to your crystals. And that's why they're crowding around every night. 'Cause she's caught like orbs on her cameras going into this cabin where her crystals are. There's even she's even captured like little images of where they appear to be carrying crystals.
cool.
Yeah, sort of crystal light. Um, so and I've heard you talking about crystals and creating a crystal engine and
Yeah, that was pretty interesting with all
yeah,
the orbs that happened in that. The
right.
energy
Yeah.
that captured was quite a surprise to me. I didn't
Mm,
see that. I could feel
mm.
it, but I didn't think I'd see it on film.
Yeah, because you captured like a misty light, didn't you? That you
And it was in all of the pictures. It kept moving
mm, yeah.
as I, threw the wands and stuff that I made. It's one of the reasons
Mm,
why I'm working with wood and with wands, because it's a nature tool in that sense.
mm, mm.
And you can tune the wood to carry whatever energy it is that you might need. And I went nuts with wands. I've got one for every planet now.
Oh, great. Yeah.
I have all 7 of the planets, including the moon, of course, which is
Mm,
technically not a planet, but in the old days it was. And
yeah.
uh, and yeah, finding out how versatile a tool that is, and the crystals that I use on them is definitely um, part of that. This
Mm.
here, I bought myself a fairy star recently.
Oh, wow.
I put this amethyst on it, and this matching amethyst that I had is
Hmm.
underneath the yew tree on that power spot. So it's a direct connection
Yeah.
to the energy of that place.
Oh, that's an interesting thing to do because I've done that with two malachite crystals that
Mhm.
I was instructed to take one to this woodland and keep one at home. So it's so I
They're
was just
through
yeah,
the ether or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that I've listened to and watched, you've been talking about, I've had aha moments. I've thought, well, I didn't know why I was doing that, but here's Siofra talking about, well, this does this, and this is why, how this works. I'm like, oh, okay. So it's amazing, isn't it? This,
Yeah, if we can
awesome.
understand the reason why some of the stuff, that's passed down, like even the basic stuff, like why do you cast a circle 3 times?
Mm-hmm.
And nobody knew. And I'm like, well, because you're casting it on the physical plane, and then you're casting it on the astral plane, and then you're casting it on the mental plane. Because, you're dealing with energies and all these different levels of energies and so forth. And it's not just an idea of a circle. There's actually things, there's reasons for this. But yeah. And I think that, it's sort of like an exciting time of exploration and interaction with some of these, like with the tree spirits and the nature spirits and so forth, and power spots, and kind of getting back into that. And there's always been a sort of camaraderie between witches and the fae, historically speaking. We're not the only ones they're interested in, obviously, but because of the fact that we're more aware of and in tune with energies that are outside of everyday reality, and we are tending to pay more attention, then they can interact with us more. I think. I just think it's cool to get to see them, even if nothing ever happens. It's just like, wow, look at you.
And you shared, I'm really interested in your she experience that you had, and I'm sure people will be interested in hearing about that.
One with the long white hair.
Yes.
I haven't seen him in a while, and there's a her that has come as well.
Okay.
And then another her that has darker hair, but I haven't seen them in the last while, probably because they're busy. It's that time of year. But when I saw him, one of our members of our group actually encountered him first, and at another house where she was at her father's place, and he was like looking through the window, floating up above the house, and she saw him, and she called me on the phone in a panic. She says, and there's this long white haired dude, floating, like, what do I do? I said, well, is he threatening? No. Is he trying to come in without permission? No. Well, go outside and see what he wants. I mean, come on. How are you gonna know? So she went outside, and he came up to her and said that they'd seen what she was doing, that she was doing the right thing, and he gave her like an astral necklace that he put on her collarbone.
Oh, wow.
But so she was just like kind of blown away by that. That was pretty cool. So when I first saw him at my house, he was actually riding a stag. It was like, I think we went through a weird time when we were under a psychic attack, magical attack by some crazy people that are, egos, etc. And he was there guarding my property. And then he came in a couple of times and just kind of hung out. Like I haven't gotten a conversation message. It's just, they just keep showing themselves to me. Here.
Yeah.
Can you see this? Like, I can see that.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were seeing him in your room putting chairs out.
Oh, like an invitation.
Like an invitation, and you waited for I think it's the approach of the full moon. You waited for the full moon, and you lit 3 candles and to invite him in to talk with him.
Apparently I have so many experiences I don't remember them all.
It's okay.
I might have watched that video so I know what I did.
Yeah, it was 3 years ago.
And that's true. Like on Facebook, every so often I get a memory. It's like I forgot
Yeah.
that I met a selkie, or no,
Oh,
a water horse.
yeah.
I
Mm,
forgotten a
was.
kelpie. I forgot that I met a kelpie until the memory came back up on my Facebook page. I'm like, oh, that's right. I forgot all about that. So I can't
Fair enough.
illuminate on that one apparently because it's not in my brain at the moment. But that's the thing. It's like,
Mm,
things keep happening. It's not a static relationship. And
mm.
now I'm curious.
You described a lovely experience as well that I thought I have to talk with you about when you were a child and you found the soft sand.
Oh my
I was
goodness,
really
soft
moved by
sand.
that.
I
Yeah.
love that sand. That was the most wonderful
Mm.
thing. And it was like in the middle of the forest and on a path. There was no real sand anywhere else. It was just this section, and I would go there and play with it. And what was really funny was when I did my astral temple
Mm.
exercise and I was checking out my astral temple, that sand is in my astral temple.
Oh.
The center.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's
And
yeah.
I thought, oh, look,
Oh,
there's that sand. And I realized I could draw sigils or symbols or
yeah.
whatever in it and put it directly into my temple that way. I don't think I've done anything with it in particular that I know of, but I just thought that was a really cool idea.
Yeah. So when you encountered it as a child,
Oh yeah, it
did
was just
you
amazing, warm,
yeah.
soft, the
Mm.
softest stuff. And it was so wonderful to touch. It was so tactile and soothing and and stuff. And I would often go there and just sit there for hours and just touch the sand. It made me
Oh.
feel comforted somehow.
Do you
So
think that was a power spot that you'd found?
it's
Do you think
possible.
yeah.
Yeah. Because, certainly I have found them here and there. And I had that one experience with that giant ley line that needed to be fixed down in Big Sur, where the fairies
Oh.
were there to assist, but they couldn't do it.
Mm.
Fairies and guardian angels have got some similar restrictions or something. And it's
Right.
like
Mm.
I've done some distant healing where I've encountered someone's guardian angel and said, "Is it okay for me to do a healing on this person?" And they're going like, "We cannot interfere. Human thing. You must decide this for yourself." I'm like, "Yeah, well, you're not very helpful. Thanks. Okay, I guess I'll have to think this one through." but
Mm.
yeah, similarly, when I encountered the ley line that had been twisted and perverted and
Mm.
shifted over to turn into dark magic and stuff like that, and I was trying to heal it. The fairies were everywhere, and I'm like, "Can you
Mm.
guys do this? I've got rid of this problem." Again, humans did it. Humans have to fix it. I'm like, "Yeah, but why
Oh,
the human has to?"
yeah.
But I said, "Well, can you help?" And they said,
Mm.
"Yeah, just we can help." And so they were like a bridge from one side of the ley line to the other in the astral realm. And as we walked up and healed it, they were able to
Mm.
keep the energy going in that direction until it took off. And when it took off, it was pretty
Oh,
obvious. And I find it
oh,
fascinating
yeah.
with the power spots and ley lines and energy and stuff like that. I encounter that sometimes in hauntings or supposed hauntings, and it's actually earth energy that's gotten stuck in the wrong place and it's interfering with the living. And I
Mm.
how to make them go underneath the house
Hmm.
and put a certain, I think I use like petrified wood or obsidian or tourmaline or whatever to make the energy go down under the ground, and then use a piece of jade to make the energy come back up. So it makes like a little
Oh,
island.
oh, well, that's
We
interesting.
have a
Yeah.
house across the street that one of our
Mm.
members said, and she was having a terrible time in her house and wanted me to go over and check it. I'm like, it's like, I can't, there's a ghost. No, but the energy was awful. And so I thought, okay, I know what's going on. So, and the street has got this slope. So the houses are like this, but the street goes down like that, right?
Yeah.
So I lowered the energy down there, and then I went to the end of the street, and I made the mistake of standing in front of it. When I put the stone, and it knocked me over. When the energy came through, it actually knocked me on my butt.
God.
And I was like, okay, note to self, stand on the outside. You could fall down. That's not a good idea. So yeah, it's like you learn stuff, little things like that are just there in your head. And I just love the fact that the universe has got a lot more to it than just us people.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And that's why I love speaking with people like yourself, because it just puts that message out there that there is more to this world and this universe than we all, think, than just is on Facebook and, media and whatever. I mean, I don't watch TV anyway, but it's it's like open your mind and accept that there is more to the world. Yeah.
And one of the things, one of my focuses is helping people to find their own power. I don't like to do things for people.
Yeah, sure.
I want them to learn how to do it for themselves. If you empower someone to be able to take care of their own situation, then they're not dependent on you. And then that gives them that confidence in themselves to be able to deal with whatever comes next. And yeah, that's why I really work hard not to be a cult leader. I'm against that completely.
Well, I'm inspired by your inspiration to do this because similar to many, many people around the world, during lockdown, you were inspired to do this channel, your channel, weren't you?
I actually started before COVID. I started in March before COVID. It was just something just popped into my head, and I'm like, because I'm seeing all this stupid stuff about the Fae on all these, and I'm trying to like correct people. It's like, no, that's not the way it is, and they're all shouting down, and no one will listen. I thought, okay, fine. I'm just gonna talk about it and put it out there. If nobody is interested, that's fine too, because I'm just going to do this and see if I can share what I've learned, because we're not doing groups anymore. I don't have an apprentice or whatever. And I've accumulated a huge amount of experience and knowledge, apparently enough that I forget some of it. And, share it with other people so that it's not completely lost. And this is a wonderful format within which to do it, because I'm a storyteller, and telling a story is like my go-to way to talk about whatever it is, my experiences and so forth. And then the people can decide if they want to do anything with it. And it's okay if people don't agree with me, because they're my experiences, and everyone is experiencing reality in a slightly different way. Although I really try to avoid conspiracy theories. I love science. And some people find this sort of a weird combination, that I'm a witch and I believe in science, but I don't see them as separate. I see them as parts of the same reality. And I don't want to become so far out in the ether that I can't get grounded anymore. Science helps to ground me, I guess.
Sure, yeah, I understand that. Yeah, I was interested in oh yes, that was it, the hydrangea fairy.
Oh yes, I thought you were going to mention
that was a beautiful experience.
Yes, and apparently they have, since I encountered her, someone, one of the members of our channel who actually lives in the state, went there, and they have removed the hydrangea.
No.
It's gone. But yeah, we were up at outside of Blue River on Highway 126, which is a place now that has had a lot of fires and so forth. So who knows what it looks like at this point. But we were up there at the hot springs, and when they have like a little bridge that goes across the river, and on the other side there's these gardens. They do weddings and all sorts of stuff and whatnot. And we were just walking around, and I saw this human-sized blue fairy standing next to the hydrangea. She was just like there, and she was interested in my staff. I had my staff with me,
Right.
and she noticed my staff, and she wanted to get a closer look. And so, yes, okay, I brought it over and, briefly conversed with her, and she told me to take some of the flowers from the hydrangea and take them with me. So I picked one of the flowers, and I have a little jar that's got those hydrangea flowers in them. And I have some other flowers that I've collected. I started growing some roses and collected some rose blossoms, and I have my fairy wand, which I was going to bring out, but I forgot. It's in the house. But I was thinking that I could connect with specific fae by I have like these tiny little jars, that you can get. Their little craft jars.
I know, yeah.
Little vials kind of thing, and put the dried flower in it, and then hang it from the wand. I haven't done it yet, but that's an idea that popped into my head, that would be a cool thing that connects the specific energy of that particular plant. And so, yeah, I'm always learning.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got roses right outside my window, and I feel connection to them. My rose bush I grew because it was to commemorate my last cat. So her ashes are underneath this rose bush. So every year when it blooms, I'm reminded of her. But yeah, I mean, roses, they've got such an amazing fairy energy about them, haven't they? And
energy too, sacred to Ishtar, Nana, Aphrodite. And when my husband and I got married, we got married on May 23rd, which that year was the Festival of the Rose, which was dedicated to Ishtar, Nana, and Aphrodite. And roses have always been important to me as well.
Yeah.
So if you saw the episode where I talked about the things that can happen that are sort of out of the blue with me and roses.
No, I haven't seen that. So
I lived in Santa Cruz at the time, and and when I was becoming a massage therapist, and I needed to get a job that was flexible and that had full benefits for me and my children. And because I had to drive to school 3 days a week.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I saw an ad in the paper, which was for working for the bus company in the administration department. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go to the first interview, which was the test, where they test your skills and so forth. And I'm sitting on the bus. This is my transportation. And a stranger walks up to me, and he hands me a rose, and he says, "Here, this is for you." And I went like, wow. I'm like on my way to try and get a job. A stranger's giving me a rose. I'm going to get this job. This is going to be my job. I know this is going to be my job. So I'm there, and I'm not worried about what I'm doing. I'm not feeling nervous or anything. I aced the test. They call me back. And now I'm going in for a panel interview, which I'd never done before. So like 3 people were going to question me. And I'm working part-time. I'm working for like one of those services where, they hire you for a few days and whatever, temporary service.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Working at a local community college. I'm getting ready to leave to get the bus to go to this interview. And another man walks up to me and hands me a rose and says, "Here, this is for you." And I'm like, okay. Once was cool. Twice is like, what? Okay, this is definitely going to be my job. So I go to the interview, and when I'm done, I hand this rose off to one of the 3 women. And then I get called for the 3rd interview, which is at the department. And at this point, I have to have a rose. It's become a thing. It's like, good luck charm or whatever. So
Yeah.
I cannot make the universe give me another rose. This seems like asking for too much. So I pick a rose from my own garden and I take it with me. And the woman I had given the rose to was one of the women at that department who was interviewing me. And she says, "What is with you and these roses?" So I tell her about the other roses. And I got the job. And the whole time I worked there, I kept a rose on my desk as
Oh, oh,
thank you to Aphrodite or whoever
yeah.
had sent me the job that I needed at the time that I needed it so that I could become a massage therapist and change my career and everything else.
Mm.
Yeah, so I have a strong connection to roses.
Yeah, I mean, this is about you. I can relate to that because I had a similar experience. It was actually, it was 2019 for my birthday. Three different friends gave me a little mini rose bush, a pink one, a white one, and a red one. And around that time, I'd had a dream because I picked up a stone from a woodland near where I live. I'd asked permission to bring it home, and I had a dream about a fairy that took me to some rose bushes in in Golden Gate Park. And there was a man on the bench. And anyway, I Googled it. I Googled fairy because I saw a fairy door in the dream, fairy door, Golden Gate Park. And this man's name came up that had written a book about fairy doors and had put a fairy door with his son in Golden Gate Park. So it's all these
Oh, lots of synchronicities.
synchronicities with roses and and
Yes,
yeah, there are rose bushes in Golden Gate Park. There's benches with rose bushes. And it's like, wow, it's amazing. Yeah.
yes, cool.
Yeah.
And that's the
Fantastic.
thing is like, the really important things that happen to us are often the little things.
Yeah. Mm.
And I think that's what a lot of people are missing. They're missing that connection. They have a hard time connecting with the world because they're so distracted by everything that's going on with people and so forth. And if we can get back to that connection with our environment and with the world that we live in and realize how important it is for us all, without
Mm.
not going to be here for much longer, the way we're treating it and so forth.
Yeah.
And that then that becomes, it enriches our existence and enriches our spirits and so forth, and helps to get us out of that self-defined ego importance thing.
Mm.
And then we
Yeah.
become much more open to receiving these amazing coincidences and synchronicities and so forth, because we're paying attention,
Mm.
listening to our own intuition.
Mm.
Yeah, because I think universe is always communicating. And people often ask me, like, do I do scrying and all this other stuff and to look into the future? And I say, well, no, not really anymore, because I'm in a constant communication with the universe. And if there's
Mm.
something I need to know, the universe tells me on
Mm.
some level, lets me know. I see the signs, I pay attention. So I don't have to
Yeah.
like an effort. And if something bad is coming, then I know it. I knew about COVID.
Mm.
Uh, I had a very strange dream just before the epidemic started. And in it, I was in a park with my family. It was sort of like a building, one of those buildings that has a back but no sides. And there was an airplane that got hit by a missile, and the airplane was crashing, and there was this cloud of stuff coming towards us. And I saw it was coming, and I knew that it was going to be close and that it was going to affect a huge area.
Mm.
And I thought I was far enough away, I'd probably be fine, but I put everybody behind the wall just in case. And I woke up from that dream and I knew we were in for something huge, some world
Mm.
event that was going to take place that was going to affect a lot of people. And so
Yeah.
it was a surprise. It seemed pretty clear. It was going through the air. It was,
Yeah. And
yeah.
do you think that was the impetus, Shifa, behind you starting your channel and thinking
Maybe so.
part of it? Yeah.
I don't know. I can't
Yeah.
remember exactly when I had that dream, but it was one of those dreams that, you wake up from it and you go like, okay, that meant something.
Mm.
And yeah, when you're an empath and really connected to things, when I lived up north in the middle of nowhere, I knew a lot about world events that were going on the planet because the trees would tell me.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that
Mm.
was good. I was glad that I was there because I think that helped a lot. Just being
Mm.
completely in nature and not having anything between me and the world kind of thing. It's like you don't chop your wood, you're going to freeze to death. If you don't haul your water, you're not going to have anything to drink. It's just basic survival, and you're living with more animals than people. We had more bears than people.
Mm. Would you consider that part of a sort of initiatory time for you?
I think so because
Yeah.
that was when I was doing a lot of channeling. And that was when things started to shift for me. I left David, who was the guy who got me into doing the channeling in the first place, and
Mm.
started and went into therapy. My first counseling sessions happened when I was up there and started trying to deal with the childhood trauma and
Mm.
abuse and so forth. So I think everything connects together, that it's not just and that's when I also found Starhawk and was doing the unconscious work, working with
Yeah.
my unconscious and my subconscious and restructuring it and seeing how that changed, getting rid of fears and anxieties and things that had been like laid in there from before I could say anything, whether I liked it or not. And
Mm.
yeah, they all kind of work together, like the different levels, physical, emotional, and mental. It's like they're all important. So yeah, I'm making a connection. That was after the tree had
Yeah.
shared
Hmm.
that with me. And so being out there, it was like whenever I was doubtful about what was going on, I could just go outside. And my first wand was from one of the first trees that I made a connection with when I moved up there. I used to
Oh.
meditate underneath this cedar tree every day for about a year. And
Mm.
they kicked me out of that place and we're going to kill the forest.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
and I was very upset
Mm.
because, I'd become friends with this tree. And the
Yeah.
nice thing about trees is you know where they are. Sad thing
Mm.
about trees is sometimes they leave or you leave. And so
Mm.
that was, I asked the tree for permission to take a piece with it and preserve its spirit. And that has informed all of my wand work since. I have
Oh.
living wand wood. I don't,
Mm.
use stuff I find off the ground. I make a
Sure.
connection with the spirit of the tree and ask permission for it. And
Mm.
so they're like, they're alive. And that
Mm.
was, that was that. I made a date to go out there and get it and was pouring buckets, and I went anyway because you have to if you make a promise, a magical promise, you
Mm.
got to keep it because it's a test.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And if you don't pass that test, well, that's the end of that. It was like, okay, yep,
Mm.
she's not ready for that. And I went and got the piece of wood and took it back to the house and peeled it and sang to it and oiled it, and it became my only wand for many, many years until
Mm.
I encountered the Madrone, who said, "Hey, I would make a really nice solar wand." And I'm like,
Mm.
"What?" My hubby the question, what kind of wood would you use for a solar wand? He said, "Oh, laurel, obviously." And I said, "Do we have any laurel in Oregon?" He said, "Well, yeah, Madrone is a laurel." I went, "You mean like that tree right there?" That been talking to me, telling me to make a good solar wand. Uh-huh. Like,
Ah.
okay. And we had nothing to cut with. And
Yeah.
that's the only time this has happened. Went up to the tree. My husband poured some water at the base as an offering.
Mm.
I put my hand on the branch it said I could have. He touched the branch and the branch fell off.
Oh gosh.
It wasn't cut. It just fell off.
Just was given to you. Yeah, the
It
tree.
was
Yeah.
very special.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, wow, that is so cool. because we had no way, and madrone's a very hard wood.
Mm.
Definitely not something that's easy to cut.
I don't know if we have that in the UK, madrone. I've heard of laurel.
Right.
Uh,
Different types of laurel. And
yeah.
you have yew. I'm making a bunch of yew wands right
Oh,
now.
yeah. Have you? Yeah.
Yes. And yew is a lovely wood. I think the fairies really are connected to yew. That
Yes.
seems quite clear. And we found a yew tree at the power spot in Southern Oregon. I've never seen one before. And there it
Yeah.
was.
Wow.
So that was special.
Yeah, they grow a lot around here. They're grown in churchyards in this country.
The reasons why you still have any. They almost went extinct because their wood is so good for making bows and arrows.
Yes.
And they were, extinct because everybody kept cutting them. And it was only because they had that story about the underworld and graveyards and the dead, and then became on sacred ground, and then later church grounds and so forth. And then they became protected. But the earth used to have 80% of all trees used to be yew.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't either. It was in my book. I'm like, it's an awesome tree,
So
but
yeah, it's like an original tree.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like the one that helped build the atmosphere.
Oh, that's so
And
cool.
when no other trees would grow, you did. So
Mm.
yeah, so I think yew is very special, and I like yew.
Yeah, and very old as well. They can live to for thousands of years.
Yes.
Amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
very wise. Imagine all the things that it's seen and absorbed in that time. My God.
Yep. The fairies definitely like the yew wood. So,
Yeah. I
but
wanted, yeah, sorry. Sorry,
that's
Karen. Before we end, I wanted to ask you about your astral traveling because I I loved what you shared about being in a car and
okay.
astral traveling from the car and under the
Really
road.
the load underneath the,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I thought that was a brilliant share.
Well,
Yeah.
I was bored. There wasn't much to do. And I just sort of popped out and was like still bored. And I just thought, I've never been under a road before. I wonder if there's anything there. Popped in and found a secret military base, which was a big surprise. And then I'm like, oh, well, I'm invisible. They won't know I'm here. So I'll look around. I started looking around, and apparently had a psychic on staff. And they knew I was there. And I suddenly thought, uh-oh, I need to get the hell out of here now. And so I came back to the car and I told everybody, like, don't drive funny, but we're driving over a secret military base, and they know I saw them. We're in the Appalachian Mountains. I think it was in Tennessee. And all of a sudden, all these military jeeps started showing up on the mountains on these roads you didn't even know were there. And I'm like, okay, that's confirmation. I'm not crazy. I really did see a military base.
Yeah. Did they follow you?
No, they couldn't figure out which car I was in.
Ah, right. So, yeah.
But they were definitely there, and it was pretty like that at first, and then they showed up, and yeah.
I mean, because they're the ones that use all of these techniques.
Well, they certainly, one of the reasons I left the States and went to Canada was to avoid being recruited.
Right.
I had some incidents that took place that made it pretty clear if I didn't get the heck out of here at that time that I'd end up in a place I didn't want to be. And so I left. And nobody in Canada believed me. And then it came out. Part of it anyway. I said, well, that's not all of it, but yes, that was part of it that I saw at the time. But yeah, which is why I try to avoid that, because it sounds like a conspiracy theory, except for the fact that that one seemed to be real.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they've CIA have released I think it's the Gateway program, isn't it? It's called that they were using. So it's
Yep,
all kind of coming to light now. Yeah.
right. There's still
Mm,
more that they haven't talked about, and maybe never will. But then I met other people that they tried to recruit too. So it wasn't
mm,
just me at that point. So then you get some external confirmation. I
mm,
like nothing is proven until you know for sure, kind of thing. So keep an
yeah.
open mind because
Mm,
narrative is something that we like to do a lot.
mm,
We like to create a narrative that makes sense to us. And a lot of times our narratives are wrong,
yeah.
but they make us
Mm.
feel better.
Oh, Shifa, it's been brilliant talking to you. And please share where people can connect with you and find you on the internet.
Well, my YouTube channel is Siofra's Magic Alcove.
Mm,
And then I have Siofra Bradigan. I have a Facebook profile that's
yeah.
Siofra Bradigan. And the people in the group on the channel asked me to start a private group on Facebook. So I've
Mm,
got Schaefer's Magic Alcove is a private group where people can just talk. I mean, my idea is that people can share their own stories, ask questions, get different points of view and so forth. It's not just all
mm,
about me. I don't want it to be all about me. So it's not like a lot of other Facebook groups where,
mm.
you're not allowed to do a lot of stuff. Um, but yeah, and then my email is Schieffer's Magic Alcove at gmail.com. I thought I should try and keep it consistent
Yeah,
across
yeah,
platforms as possible.
yeah. Makes
And
life easier.
as an FYI, Schieffer Bradigan translates to spirited elf.
Does it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And weirdly enough,
wow.
there's a Schieffer Bradigan on the internet from history in Ireland that was reputed to be a witch and could make the dead walk.
Oh, wow.
That was just fabulous when I found that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great, of course, because we didn't mention that you have this Irish ancestry.
Right. Yeah.
Mm,
My grandmother was raised by her grandmother at the base of Knocknashee in
mm,
Sligo County. And
mhm.
that's one of the seven sacred hills of Ireland. It's the
Yeah.
Hill of Fairy.
Mm. So
And yet,
yeah.
it seems pretty clear we probably have fairy blood in our family because we are one weird family. It runs my daughter, my granddaughter. It's like, our abilities are definitely it's being like it's hereditary, it would appear.
Mm.
Although it could just be my influence and raising them. Knows? But it's kind of fun. I always
Yeah.
told her that we were part fairy. And she said, well, I haven't seen any evidence of that. I said, it's not going to say in the family Bible was a fairy, Mom. You're going to find it where we lived. And people in
Yeah.
Ireland do not like to live on fairy hills.
Mm.
Only fairy friends. We
Yeah.
say according to the local folklore. So yeah, it is kind of
Wow. Oh, what a cool mum to have and cool grandmother.
cool. Yeah, it's been interesting. My mother got to go to Ireland twice. I've not ever been able to go, and that would be a
Mm.
dream to be able to go and just visit, like, where the family came from. But people,
Yeah.
the family, when my mother and her brother went, they knew exactly who they were. We have a tall
Oh,
gene family tree.
right.
So, and it's like, we have men that crop up, they're like 6'2", 6'3",
All
all
right.
trees. And
Mm.
it's apparently a very telling gene in Sligo County, because this one woman came up to my uncle in church and looked
Mm.
at him and says, you must be a Goulden.
Oh, wow. Because they're all
So
tall.
I am. She says, we could be related. Apparently they were extremely friendly people. My mother just had a blast.
Yeah. Oh, the Irish are. I mean, yeah, I'd love to go. But I've been to Dublin but I want to go to the west side and
The west side is where
visit off.
ancient ruins are, is on
Right.
the west coast. And there's a story that Atlantis was off the west coast of Ireland. And I
Ah,
never heard that. My mother told me, and then I looked it up, and someone had just written a book about that.
oh yeah, because there was an island, wasn't there? I forgot what it's called now. That was
There's
off.
an island that disappears and comes back every so many years too. And story of
Yes.
the disappearing island where you can get lost. It's like 7 years or 10 years or something like that, where people have shipwrecked on it and then can't get off until the island comes back. And it's like, okay, who knows
Yeah.
for sure? But yep, it was kind of entertaining to say the least.
Amazing. I think it's called High Brazil. Is that right? High
I
Brazil?
remember,
Yeah. Yeah, because
but
it's on, sorry, yeah, it's on very old maps. You know, the very, very old maps where people look and they're like, oh, well, we have,
hey, what are you
yeah,
talking about?
where, oh, yeah, because they've got Antarctica on these really old maps. Then, like,
Oh yeah, the
historians are
pure
saying, well,
map, fabulous, isn't it?
yeah,
They can see
yeah,
under the ice on the Pure Reefs map, and you're like, hello, how did that happen?
yeah,
Um,
exactly. And like historians are saying, oh, no, people couldn't have known about
they,
Antarctica.
now they've confirmed that those things are there under the ice, under like 20 miles of ice or whatever it is. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, I always thought I like anachronistic archaeology.
yeah, me too. But yeah, I like that. Oh, it's been great speaking to you. And so I
All
wish
right,
you well. And I keep
you
in
as well.
touch through your wonderful Patreon and other places, Siofra. And thanks for being a wonderful guest.
No, thank you for wanting to do this, and this has been lots of fun. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, I've enjoyed it too. It's been fantastic. Just a minute, Siofra. I'm going to let in my cat because she's looking at me through the window, and then we'll continue.
Yeah, you can't let her do that.
I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to let my cat out.
Okay.
Yeah,
He came in, he's going to go out.
she knows whenever I'm talking to someone recording these episodes.
Oh, yeah. He wants you to work to have to fix stuff. Like you just can't do it
No,
all the way through and seamless and all this other stuff.